I've always been a fan of base building games and similar types of sims, even if I've never been particularly good at them. Games like RimWorld and Prison Architect. And I'm also a big fan of history. I love it when things have happened in the past, because that means I don't have to worry about them. So I was really interested to try the upcoming Ground of Aces by Blindflug Studios, who very kindly provided me with a key to try out the game. In Ground of Aces, you build up and manage a World War II-era airfield, and send out your fleet of aircraft to complete missions, which mostly seem to consist of cake theft, but also some less important things like recon and dogfighting. The core gameplay is probably the most similar to RimWorld or Dwarf Fortress, where you're building up a base complete with beds, toilets, and other amenities to house your ever-growing ground and air crew. You also build up your airfield with different runways and hangars, with the size and quality of available planes varying based on the size and quality of runway that they're tied to. Generally, you're on your own to acquire or produce the game's various resources from the surrounding environment. There's something kind of funny about sending your officers out to collect some berries because you forgot to plant enough beans, but overall, I think the aesthetic and core premise of the game is interesting enough and applied well enough to look past some of the slightly stranger elements tied to that. Some of the materials you'll need are built out of processing one or more of the lower tier resources to make something new, like raw water being turned into purified water, or sand and water being turned into cement. But some other resources like tarp are just made by spending time on them at an appropriate workstation. And on top of what you're able to produce, every week you get a shipment of extra materials from headquarters, with the size of the shipment depending on the size and quality of your airfield, as well as your success rate on missions over the last week. As you build up your plethora of pilots and planes, you'll be sending them on a variety of mission types. The missions trigger at various points throughout the game where you'll have to assign crews and their planes to complete them. The amount of planes you can dedicate to any given mission depends on the mission type, and your success depends on factors like the state and type of the planes, the base morale and pilot morale, and on missions where you can assign more than one plane, having more will usually increase your odds of success, although that also increases the fuel needed to complete the mission, and it can mean that you don't have other planes available to complete other missions if they're assigned while all of your planes are out doing something else. If the missions are successful, you get a morale boost which makes everyone more effective, on top of building towards better shipments at the end of each week. If you're not successful, then everyone gets really sad. As you progress throughout the game, you'll also be subjected to air raids by the enemy. You're perfectly free to have an undefended open-air concept base with dirt airfields and parking spots, but then you'll be far more susceptible to those air raids, damaging your planes or other equipment and either destroying them or making them more likely to be destroyed in an upcoming mission. If the open concept trend isn't for you, then you can build a nice safe metal hangar, and you can also deploy AA guns requested as weekly rewards from HQ. In my last game, I got overly ambitious based on how well things seemed to be going early on, and I started to build a giant Tier 3 airstrip with a huge 2-plane hangar, skipping over the Tier 2 airstrip and simple things like having enough metal to build the hangar. So I accidentally trapped my Spitfire with no parking spot, since it couldn't reach the normal one through a half-constructed hangar door. It also took all of my crew forever to make the Tier 3 airstrip because I didn't have enough concrete. So the lesson there is that you'll actually have to plan what you're doing instead of just doing stuff like I was. One of the results of this was that I ended up losing my other planes by sending them on a mission they couldn't handle, where they were supposed to like this video and subscribe for more, but instead they ended up MIA. Overall though, I recommend the game for anyone who's interested in this historical twist on this game genre. One thing I was a bit curious about was whether the more specifically directed goals of getting planes and going on missions would feel too limiting compared to some of the more open-ended options of a game like RimWorld. But I think in some ways having a bit more of a focus can be a benefit here. I often find myself being unsure of what I should be trying to do in other games because I lack any of my own ability to set goals apparently, so I found the premise more than enough to keep me engaged. The game is still in development, so it's not fully available yet, although you can try it now with the Steam Next Fest demo, which I'll link to in the description. This does also mean I ran into a fair number of bugs while playing, nothing that really broke the game for me entirely, but some stuff that did impact the experience. For example, there can be some pathfinding issues if two characters are doing a similar job at the same time, so make sure to keep an eye on them. I also had some of the task displays bug out. You normally have a short list of tasks to accomplish, but when I finished one set and moved on to the next, the prior one's completion check mark just hung around and no amount of clicking seemed to get rid of it, though luckily I could still read them by just hovering over the place where the text should have been. Again, nothing entirely game ruining, but hopefully stuff that can be ironed out by the time of a full release. I've really enjoyed my time with the game so far, so once again give it a look if you're interested in the genre and subject matter. Thanks again to Blindflug for providing the key, and thank you for watching.